I want you to stop what you are doing for just a second. I need you to hear something that took me 4 decades and almost everything I had to finally understand. I am 71 years old. I worked from the time I was 19, never missed a paycheck, never called in sick unless I was flat on my back, and I retired with almost nothing. Not a little. Almost nothing. And the worst part, the part that keeps me up at night more than the empty bank account ever could, is that nobody did this to me. No one stole from me. No company cheated me. I did it to myself, one quiet, reasonable-sounding decision at a time. And if you are in your 30s, 40s, or even your 50s right now, and you are working hard and telling yourself it will all work out, I need you to keep watching. Because I used to say the exact same thing. Before I go any further, if this kind of honest talk is something you want more of, an old man sitting in his kitchen telling you the truth nobody told him, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. I am not here to sell you anything. I am just here because somebody should have said this to me 40 years ago, and nobody did. Now let me take you back to where it all started. I was 19 when I got my first real job. A warehouse position outside of Cleveland. Paid decent money for 1971. I remember my father shaking my hand on my first payday like I had just crossed into manhood, and I suppose in his mind I had. Back then you worked, you brought money home, and that was the full measure of a man. Nobody in my family talked about saving. Nobody talked about investing. You earned, you paid your bills, and whatever was left you spent because life was short and you had earned the right to enjoy it. That was the philosophy. I absorbed it like water into dry ground and I never questioned it, not for years and years. By the time I was 26, I had a wife, a son, a mortgage, and a car payment. I also had a habit of telling myself I would start saving next year. Next year when the car was paid off. Next year when the mortgage got more manageable. Next year when the kids were older and cost less. There was always a next year waiting right around the corner, and I was always 1 year behind it. The first thing I did wrong, and I want you to really sit with this, is that I treated saving like it was optional. Like it was something you did with leftovers. The truth that nobody explained to me is that saving is not what you do with what is left. It is the first thing you do. You take it out before you see it, before you touch it, before your brain has a chance to convince you that you need a new television or a better truck. I never understood that. I thought people who had money were just lucky or born into it. I did not understand that most of them had simply learned to pay themselves first, every single time, without exception, without negotiation. If I had put away just $50 a week starting at $50, the cost of a few dinners out, and never touched it, the math on that by the time I turned 65 would have made me a different man entirely. I am not talking about being rich. I am talking about dignity. I am talking about being able to retire without lying awake doing calculations about whether I can afford to keep the heat at 68 degrees in January. $50 a week. I spent more than that on things I cannot even remember. But I did not do it. And every year that I did not do it, the math got worse and I got more comfortable pretending the math did not apply to me. By my early 30s, I was making good money. Foreman position at a manufacturing plant. My wife was working too. Between us, we were bringing in more than either of our families had ever seen. And you know what we did? We expanded our life to meet the income. Bigger house. Newer cars. Vacations we put on credit. A boat that we used maybe a dozen times before we sold it at a loss. I look back at that man and I do not dislike him. He was just doing what everyone around him was doing. He was living. But he was living on borrowed time and borrowed money, and he had absolutely no idea. There's something dangerous about making decent money in your 30s. It gives you a feeling of permanence that is completely false. You start to believe the income will always be there. That you will always be healthy enough to earn it. That your industry will always need you. I believed all three of those things completely, and the world eventually corrected every single one of them. The plant I worked at started downsizing in the late 1980s. I watched men I had worked beside for 15 years walk out with boxes. I told myself I was different. I was management. I was valuable. And then one Tuesday morning in 1991, they called me into a conference room and handed me a folder and thanked me for my service. And I was 50 years old and out of work for the first time since I was a teenager. That is when I found out exactly how little I had saved. And it was the most frightening number I had ever seen in my life. I want to stay with that period for a moment because I think it is where the second great mistake of my life truly revealed itself, even though I had been making it for decades without seeing it. The mistake was this: I never built anything that could work without me. Every dollar I ever earned required me to physically show up somewhere and trade hours for it. Every single one. I had no investments. I had no rental income. I had no business. I had nothing that grew while I slept. My only asset was my labor, and at 50 years old, after a layoff, with a bad knee and an industry in decline, my labor was suddenly worth considerably less than it used to be. I found another job. Lower pay, longer hours, worse benefits. I told myself it was temporary. It was not temporary. That became the rest of my working life. I went from job to job in my 50s trying to piece together something that resembled a career while quietly watching the retirement I had never properly saved for become more and more impossible. And still, I did not course correct the way I should have. I saved a little more, yes. But I was also helping grown children through hard times, carrying credit card debt I kept meaning to pay off, and telling myself I would work until 68 or 70 if I had to, that there was still time. There is a moment in every man's life, I think, where the future becomes the present while you are not paying attention. You blink and you are 65. You blink again and your knees will not cooperate, and your back is a negotiation every morning, and working until 70 is not a plan anymore, it is a fantasy. I hit that wall at 67. I could not keep going the way I had been going. My body made the retirement decision that my savings never could. So I stopped. And I counted what I had. And I learned to live inside that number with whatever dignity I could hold on to. I am not going to tell you how much it was because the amount is not really the point. The point is that it was far less than it should have been for a man who worked hard his entire adult life and never had a lazy day. The point is that hard work alone, and I cannot say this loudly enough, hard work alone does not build wealth. It never has. Hard work earns income. What you do with that income is an entirely separate skill that nobody teaches you, and if you grow up in a house like mine, nobody even mentions it. That is the third thing I did wrong, and in some ways it is the one that cuts deepest. I confused working hard with being financially responsible. I thought they were the same thing. I thought that if I showed up, put in the hours, never cheated anyone, and kept my nose clean, the money would take care of itself somehow. That financial security was the natural reward for honest labor. It is not. It has never been. Financial security is built deliberately, with knowledge and habit and discipline, and it does not care how tired you are at the end of the day or how many years you gave to a place. It only cares what you did with the money when it arrived. If I could go back, and I know this is the part everyone says, I know it is almost a cliche by now, but hear me say it because I mean every word of it. If I could go back to that 19-year-old in the warehouse with his first paycheck, I would sit him down and I would say this. The money you make is not yours yet. Not until you have paid your future self first. Save before you spend, every time, even when it is uncomfortable, especially when it is uncomfortable. Do not wait until you can afford to save, because that day will not come on its own. You make it come. And learn, please, learn how money can grow without you. Even slowly. Even imperfectly. A little bit working quietly over decades becomes something. Nothing working quietly over decades becomes nothing. I worked 40 years and I retired with almost nothing, and now I sit in this kitchen and I think about the small decisions, the hundreds of small reasonable sounding decisions that added up to this. The boat. The credit cards. The next years that never arrived. The assumption that tomorrow had more time in it than it did. I am telling you this because you still have time. Most of you do. And the difference between the life I have and the life I should have had is not talent or luck or connections. It is knowledge applied early and consistently. That is it. That is the whole distance between those two lives. Do not make me your cautionary tale without learning the lesson. I am already the cautionary tale. Now you decide what you do with it. If this reached you, if any part of this felt like something you needed to hear, share it with someone. A son, a daughter, a younger friend who is making the same quiet mistakes I made. Subscribe if you want to keep hearing this kind of honest conversation. I have more to say. I have got a whole life's worth of things I wish someone had said to me. And I am finally saying them out loud.